Well, it's hard to ignore a story like this in Kenya, where this goes on basically every day.
But it's not easy to document. A woman in Nairobi introduced Stephanie to a local tribe planning a ceremony. There, Stephanie met Seta, the focus of the ceremony.
Sometimes a family will circumcise all the girls on the same day. If a few girls are close in age, they'll all be on the same day. Seta was quite old. She was 16, and she should have gone through this maybe 2 years before. She was the first girl in her village ever to go to school, and her teachers had told her, they had told her class that it was a bad thing and that it was painful and it was dangerous. And so she had that knowledge that the other girls never had. This is her father and his friends, and they'll spend many days drinking and celebrating the circumcision ceremony. Because when people come to celebrate, they'll bring gifts for her or for her family. And then just when the sun is setting, she'll have her head shaved by one of her father's wives to symbolize the shedding of her girlhood. This is the night before her circumcision. Hundreds of girls will come from the villages around there. They'll spread her with red ochre, and they'll try to calm her fears about what's going to happen. They'll tell her it doesn't hurt and that she'll be beautiful and she'll be a woman and she should not fear what will happen to her the next day. I had seen it before, and every time I saw it again, I thought I wouldn't be able to sit through this. You know, it's a feeling like there's nothing I can do to stop this, but I don't want to see it again. This is just after they set her on the mat, and she's actually forbidden to cry or show any emotion. So she puts her hands over her eyes in an effort to not show any emotion. All her limbs are held by the women, and the men are nowhere in sight. It's taboo for men to watch. This tribe, the Samburu, they're the most common form, the most common type of genital mutilation is a clitoridectomy and excision, which is a cutting off of the labia minora and parts of the labia majora. And this is her just as she starts to scream. And she's screaming, "Why are you trying to kill me? Why can't you save me? Oh, Mom, why are you doing this to me?" And this is her feet in the blood just after she stood up. The white part is the goat's fat that's used to stop the bleeding. And that's the razor that's used. And on her hand is the goat fat. It's the only time in a woman's life that she's given any status in society. It's the only day. And without going through this, she will never be anything in her culture. She might as well leave. I mean, she would be completely banished from her tribe. And Seta willingly came home. She knew this was bad, and she came home for it. Hundreds of people came to celebrate. They sing and dance all day. They eat and they drink all day. When they put her inside her house, the women were in there making tea, and they were just not paying any attention to her, and she was just sort of bracing herself against this pain that was hitting her. They say the pain comes afterwards, more. She understood that I was probably the only person that empathized with her. So when Seta was sitting on her bed, she was looking at me saying, "I'm dying, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna bleed to death. Can you help me?" I was so close to the story and so attached to it that I really didn't think I had done anything coherent. So I'm sitting here looking at this girl who I think is just going to bleed to death and thinking I couldn't even make her an example of what happens every day. When the pain had subsided somewhat, she got up and she sort of staggered out to the bush. She was woozy from the loss of blood, and that's her examining herself to make sure she's been cut properly. And if she isn't, they'll operate again. It's such an injustice. It's so brutal. It's something you can't even think about. I mean, to this day, I wake up and think, did that really happen? You know, did that happen in front of me? Does this go on every day? It just blows my mind still.